Have you ever done that?
No.
No?
Not like that. We've
It's-
done low
you
stem
guys-
work, but I've never done low stem work using the constant and like turning it. I don't even know how it would.
It is
I'll tell you what I
amazing. You
similar.
can't knock it.
I'll tell you what I do. Which
He's a low stem guy.
I am a low stem guy.
Yeah,
I
me
love
too.
low stems,
I love
especially
low
for
stem.
trying to enhance behaviors and get through things. But what I do with a dog, especially like a reactive dog, like your situation, is instead of the continuous and turning this dial up, I'm pulsing the nick and turning the dial up.
Yeah, you can
So
pulse.
I'm doing that instead of the
But that
continuous.
that pulsing works better on some dogs than others.
Sure.
Yeah.
I will utilize, the goal is always the least amount of pressure possible.
For sure.
That's how I work. A lot of balance trainers go in there, put an
127.
e-collar on.
God damn.
You know, and they're just, you know, they'll put it on a 40 and bam.
I know.
And it's punitive. So they'll set the dog up, they'll put like food on the counter, the dog goes to get it, and they just, and it's terrible because the dog does not understand what the pressure means. It's not fair.
What they're trying to do, or what they're trying to emulate, is because I've talked to a lot of old school dog trainers that were before the modern time of now. This low stem thing, like it's in now. It's a very modern way of using the e-collar. What they were trying to do is they're trying to give the dog a traumatic enough experience for that behavior that they don't want, so that the next time the dog thinks about doing that behavior, that they say, nope, I remember what happened last time.
I mean, it reminds me of the old school rattlesnake training. Put it up to 100 and bam.
Yep.
You know what, you guys, we know that those dogs who deal with that have an issue with the e-collar afterwards. You pull an e-collar out, and most dogs,
Run away.
they're like, I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't want that anywhere near me.
Yeah.
But my dogs, when I put an e-collar on them, they're like, yeah, we're going.
Do something.
Where are we going? We're going to work.
Oh,
You know?
man.
But that punitive, light them up
Yeah.
when they do something wrong.
Yeah.
You'll see dogs. We've had dogs that Sherry has worked with that have had that type of training, and now they're absolutely frightened of e-collars. And e-collar should not be like that, but when you have to readjust a dog's mind to e-collar to give them a positive after they hate it,
Yeah.
that's a whole other thing.
I mean, now you're going through like a reconditioning phase. pretty much,
Reconditioning,
so.
it's really awful.
What does your conditioning phase look like with an e-collar?
Oh, okay. I love to do long line.
Yeah.
I like to do long line. I start off with long line immediately. And I'm sure, so I've heard Colleen used to call them tap and turns, you know. Sherry calls them let's goes. I mean, everybody has their own word for it, but you're getting, so first of all, a lot of trainers don't just start with the e-collar, they'll do some basic stuff first, right? Do the long line first, do different things first. Then you layer on the e-collar. Some trainers are like, why do that? This is fun. We can do it at the same time, whatever. Everybody has their own way of doing it. I personally like to do a long line first, do those, you know, do pressure release. I'm big on pressure release. And then I add in this additional pressure. But this pressure is psychological, so even if I'm in a low stimulus area and I'm using low stim, it is draining the dog mentally.
Yeah.
I mean, the dog that I just worked this week, my last session, this is a dog that was amped, reactive, all of this stuff. I mean, totally tired. We're not running the dog. We're not doing anything insanely physical. We are simply working the mind with an additional pressure. And it's not painful.
Yeah.
It's simply a tap on the shoulder.
Yeah.
Like, hey, let's go. It's just like leash pressure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's supposed to mimic leash pressure because the goal is eventually you don't have a leash. And then that
It's like a
becomes
leash
the
on
pressure.
Wi-Fi.
But it's more like Bluetooth. But yeah, you can keep
That's how I
calling it
explain it to
Wi-Fi.
people. It's like a leash on Wi-Fi.
Right.
And honestly, the remote collar, I always wanted to remain communicative, not punitive. I want the dog to
Absolutely.
understand what's going on. And the only way you're going to get that is starting in those low stem. And if you have to upgrade to higher stem because of the dog's threshold or arousal level or whatever's going on,
You do what you got to do.
you got to meet the dog where they're at. That's fine. But the majority of the work and the training and the conditioning with it should be in a low stem
Yes.
with high rates of success, more or less.
I agree.
So.
And what's good about it is I'm not a big on corrections using it, but I'm not anti-correction. Once the dog understands what it means,
then you can hold them accountable more.
but once they're conditioned, you don't really have to do much.
Yeah.
You really don't.
What happens when you're doing conditioning with the e-collar and you have a crazy sensitive dog?
Then you'll work them on a
bring
1.
down your level. Yeah, you bring down your level.
Just bring it
So like
in.
my Corso, super sensitive dog. Like probably by far the most sensitive dog I've ever had in my household. And generally, I try to work dogs on vibration if I can.
Oh, I never use it.
But the vibration was too much for him.
The vibration is way more intense than the stim.
Depends on the
I've
dog.
had dogs.
Yeah,
And especially on the IQ Plus, that vibration on the IQ Plus is really low.
Oh my gosh, I'm like, don't even touch the vibration. The vibration is a completely different feeling.
It is.
And you can't. It's not high or low. It's just
Sure.
one thing.
Sure.
And sensitive dogs, most of the ones I've worked with, if the owner accidentally touches the vibration, they go into flight.
Sure.
Whereas the stim, and there's this misconception, oh, vibration's so much kinder to the dog. It's like, no.
I think it's a perspective thing because when I talk about e-collar work with people, I generally talk about the vibration part because honestly, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's vibration or it's low stim. It's just a feedback. That's all it is. It's just a feedback, right?
The feeling is completely different.
The feeling is different, but that stim has the propensity to be way more uncomfortable than that vibration is.
Yeah, but a stim on 1 or 2.
That's someone 1 or 2. You're right. The vibration is going to feel
That's
stronger, 100%.
But for a sensitive dog, whatever. I mean, we've all been in a situation where our e-collar is dying and all we have is vibration left. I mean, it's true. And so you're like, shit. You hit the vibration, you're like, it's all I got. But I don't use the vibration. I predominantly do
I like
not
the
use
vibration.
it.
For me,
Yeah,
I like
I
the
use
vibration.
more vibration than low stim, but lately with my dog, I've been kind of
It depends
curious about playing with more low stim stuff.
Yeah, it depends on what I'm working on. But my Corso, I had to start him off on stim, and we were working on like 2, like maybe 2,
Yep.
3 max
Yeah.
for the longest time. And now he's a lot more conditioned to it, so we can go up to higher levels if we need to. But yeah, the sensitive dogs, it's challenging. But I like the vibration as almost like a precursor to the stim sometimes.
No.
You don't like that?
No, I would never do that.
No?
Not on my life.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, I think I might.
How do your clients respond when you talk to them about using remote collar work?
So I love using remote collar. But so what I do is, okay, so I had a session the other day and I'm like, this dog needs e-collar. And I knew.
Be like that sometimes.
I knew
It'd be like that.
that the owner was going to be resistant.
Uh-huh.
So I brought the e-collar, had it all charged up, and they had a pretty serious situation occur with the mailman.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, So the first thing I do is I bring it out and I said, well, I want you to feel it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I have them both feel it. Turn it up. Do you feel it yet? No? Okay. Turn it up. Do you feel it now?
Now we're cooking.
And I'm like, and if it gets up to a 40 and they don't feel it, I'm like, you need to go to the chiropractor because you have some nerve damage. But, I explained that. And then, so usually they feel it around between a 20
Yes.
and a 40.
Yeah.
And then I say, well, I'm going to work your dog under 10. And they're like, what? I'm like, yep. Your dog's sensitive, so it's probably going to be under a 5.
Yeah.
And so as I'm working the dog, and I'm doing the long line and I'm doing different things, I show them, see?
Proof.
And they are just like, and the dog responds immediately.
Oh,
Right?
man.
The dog responds immediately. Then it gets real good. Because, like, I had this pitty, and she has high prey drive, very reactive. So I don't know if you've ever heard of contrast of emotion.
Contrast of emotion? Explain it to me.
So basically, I'll have a dog either on a longer lead or a long line. And the dog, when it goes out to whatever it is, another dog, obviously I use proximity.
Sure.
I'm very mindful about the psychological threshold because once they get to a 10, you know.
It's over.
Right. So I'm working with their threshold, but what ends up happening is I let them go out to it because when they go out to it, they get adrenalized. They feel, they just feel that adrenaline rush and the cortisol and everything that goes along with it. Then I'll bring them back either to my side or I'll bring them to place.
Okay.
And side and place, those are calm.
Yep.
So if you've already worked on place work, dogs understand that that means calm.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing is going out there, that feels terrible. Ooh, this feels good.
Yeah.
Go out there, this feels terrible. This feels good. So then the dog will start to go, and I've had it happen. I learned this at Sherry's too. The dog will go out and he'll think about it. Once I've drilled it into him, he's like, no, this feels terrible. And then he comes back over to me. And they start to make that decision on their own.
Yeah.
And so I really did this with my Wheaton. He was a weirdo. That dog was weird. He was a 1%er. He would bite, he's just a weird dog. And he would try to fence fight. So I started doing long line where I let him out to close to the dog on the fence. He would get adrenalized. Then I would recall him using e-collar back to place. Let him calm down. So you're also teaching an off switch.
Yeah.
Let him go out, get adrenalized again, bring him back to place. And I just kept doing it. And there was this one moment I was doing dishes and I looked outside and the other dog barked and I looked and he went over and then he turned around and went to his place all on his own and just chilled. I was like, this contrast of emotion stuff works great. I mean, if it could work on that weirdo,
Yeah.
I loved him, but he was weird. He was very weird. But yeah, so contrast of emotion is essentially letting them go out, feel it, and then letting them feel something that feels better. And they will make the decision to go back to what feels better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We kind of do that in a way with like when you do like box work. There's a discerning difference on the box versus off the box.
Yeah. Yeah. But she's much more focused on the dog's emotions and state of mind.
Yeah.
Usually when we're doing a lot of that stuff, it's in an obedience framework. And so we're really more so concerned about the dog doing the behavior versus
The state of mind.
yeah.
Yeah.
versus their state of mind when they're doing it.
Because obedience is
Because
excitement.
you don't do any treats, right?
Okay, so I think any trainer that says they'll never use anything ever,
Fair.
I struggle with that. I will use food for different things.
Okay.
But I do think that food is prey and prey is excitement.
Correct.
So if you're doing obedience, that's a job, there's high excitement.
Sure.
But the natural state of a dog is calm.
Yeah.
And what most people want in their homes is calmness. So I'm going to strive for calm. I love working a dog, but like I will have a client that has an Aussie that does agility and only does agility. And the dog, I see the dog and it is amped up and it is absolutely neurotic, chaotic. Because they're getting the work, they're doing the agility, it's high adrenaline, it's working, but they never come back home and learn calm. They're always in this state of mind that's up here.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to work your dog like that, I don't care. I think it's good because dogs, especially those breeds, need a job.
Yeah.
But now we need to, home is different. Now we are calm. You've done your job. You don't need to be up here anymore. Now we're going to bring you down.
Speaking of Aussies, is there any dog breeds you don't like working with?
Wait, you don't like Aussies?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
What?
But I
Yeah.
thought about I will say that the majority of the time I see Aussies, they're usually over the top.
Yep,
They're reactive.
yep.
And they're just like
They're
neurotic.
totally jammed up
Yeah, all
because
the
they're
time.
Is that a
because they're not
fulfillment
being
thing?
worked.
I think it's a
They're not
fulfillment
being
thing.
worked, but they're not being taught how to be calm. If they are being worked, they're not getting that calm piece,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
So is there any breeds, I won't say you don't like, because I like all dogs. Like I'm a dog lover in general, through and through. But is there a dog breed that they're not your favorite, we'll say that.
Doodles.
Really?
Oh, don't put that on there.
We got two of them too.
No. I
We
mean,
got two right now.
I will work with them, but one thing that I have an issue with Doodles is that they are so poorly bred that I have had so many
Sure.
with neurological problems. And once you have the neurological problem mixed with SA, separation anxiety, yeah. So I just had a board and train with this doodle, and it hadn't been groomed. And so I wasn't going to work it because that's painful. It had a lot of matting. I work with my groomer, and I do training sessions at the groom shop too. Okay. We work together, and the dog hadn't been groomed in a long time, had behavioral issues on the groom table. We worked through it. Everything was good. We wanted it to be a positive experience. Great. So now I can work the dog, right?
Okay.
So I'm working the dog. I'm doing long line, and it's okay. I can get it. It's very good socially. Bizarre. But then it has an issue. Its biggest issue is with cars. And it is like not normal.
Yeah.
It isn't normal. And I can sense it because I've worked with a lot of dogs, right? So I know that this isn't normal. So I say to the owner, I go, I had this other doodle that had its 12-week shots, and it had a really bad reaction. And from there, it had some neuro issues. And I said, and I'm really wondering if there's a neurological issue here. She sends me a screenshot from the vet of their conversation. The dog had a horrible reaction to the 12-week shots, couldn't be touched for a couple days, and now the dog has these issues, right? So working with a neurological dog is a whole other ballgame.
Yeah.
Not all doodles have a neuro issue, but the vast majority of them are so poorly bred, and they are just,
So doodles.
That's my issue with doodles.
That would
And I see it all the time.
Yeah.
really.
Well, you know the
Yes.
guy that created the doodle,
He was mad.
on his deathbed, he said that was the worst thing he's done in his life.
Really?
Yes. That was his biggest regret in life, was making the doodle.
That was the blunder, huh?
Have you seen the Malinois doodle? I was like, oh, dear God. I was so mad. I was like, I almost threw my phone.
You know they do Rottweiler doodles too.
I've seen 'em.
Roddy Poos?
Stop.
Yeah.
More like poo rots.
I don't know if that sounds better or not, but
Well, that's what they
Poodle
are.
Rottweiler.
I don't understand this fad, and it's, but I mean, it's just as bad as those designer XL breeds, which I know you get a lot of.
I know, so we have to edit
Yeah.
that part out.
We are not. We are leaving that shit in. People need to know. There's
You're
too
gonna
many of
lose
these
so
damn
many
bullies.
clients.
So that's another conversation just in
I
the
just
dog
want a
industry in general.
tri-colored little
Like,
chubby face thing.
the designer dog breed is becoming a thing. Whereas back in the
so
day,
bad.
like 80s and 90s, they were just considered mutts. But
Yeah.
now it's becoming like a niche thing where people can command 10s and 15 and 20,000. Have you seen the fluffy Frenchie?
I know all about the fluffy Frenchie.
Because you have a Frenchie.
I have a Frenchie, and I did
Fluffy
not
Frenchie.
buy this Frenchie. I inherited this Frenchie, and this Frenchie had all kinds of problems. Okay, I have gotten the Frenchie to a good place, but I have spent more on that Frenchie than I did on my other 3 dogs combined. I cook for that dog. Okay, I mean, a poorly bred dog is,
A nightmare.
it's a nightmare.
I don't know if I've seen that yet. I don't know
What?
if I've had that experience yet.
What experience?
This dog is just, like neurologically messed up, or it's just like a poor breeding process, and you got this thing.
I mean, it's so hard to how do you tell somebody that comes in for training, oh, can't help it, your dog is...
Well,
No,
not even apart from
like-
that. How do you even tell that this dog is like?
I knew it. I just
How
knew
do
it.
you know?
You know, because you've worked, once you get your hands on so many dogs, and there's certain behaviors that are not shifting at all, and there's movements that the dog makes. That was one of the key indicators for me, right? Was there were certain movements like circling. Sometimes it's obsessive, but you normally see that in like a working dog that it hasn't been fulfilled at all, and they're in survival mode. But this isn't that.
Yeah.
And their movements are weird, and there's just some shifty things, and you're like, well, that's a little strange. But I do think with that particular doodle that I had, that I just knew. But I was also there right when the 12-week shots were done with this other doodle, and I helped to detox the dog to try to help it as much as possible. If you're doing 12-week shots, I don't care on what kind of dog you're doing 12-week shots on, there's a way to boost the immune system so that the dog can process through that. If the health of the parents are good, and you have a responsible breeder doing health testing and everything else, the chances of those reactions does go down, but I would still boost the immune system and then do a detox after. That's what I would do.
Okay.
Now that I've experienced it,
How
yes.
long have you been in dog training?
I was just
Well,
about to ask that.
I quit my corporate job in 2015 or 16, somewhere around there. And so from there, I just jumped in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what, 7, 8 years, something
Yeah.
like that?
Nice.
Yeah.
Over that course of time, how many dogs have you think you've met or worked with?
We've had this discussion, and you are such a numbers guy. He's like, I'm done.
No, that's not it.
3,000.
That's not
And 86.5
That's
dogs.
0.5.
And it's only a 0.5 because they didn't finish.
You're laughing way too hard. But
You know I'm right.
It's true. Because it's
no, but that's not
don't
where I'm
know.
going with this.
All
Where
right.
I'm going with this is, out of all the dogs that you've seen and touched over that time period, how many of those dogs do you think had neurological issues?
I would say at least 10%,
Okay.
maybe 15.
I think the number might even be a little bit higher than that. to
It
be honest with
probably
you.
is.
Because breeding, backyard breeding, irresponsible breeding. We'll say that.
Irresponsible breeding,
Irresponsible
and I
breeding.
find it the most in designer breeds.
Like-
Sorry.
I see it.
yeah, like Frenchies. and
Like you
stuff.
see the difference, even dogs that are just like raw, even when they're young puppies, like you see the difference of a well-bred dog coming in at 12, 16 weeks versus a dog that someone picked up on the side of the highway from somebody out of their trunk. Like
Much-
you see the
Homeless
difference.
dogs are great.
Oh, we had that conversation.
Man.
Those dogs are
Man.
amazing.
Doing the executed in the CGC on an hourly basis.
Yes. They just, their exposure is incredible.
We were
We
having
just
a
had
hardcore
this
conversation
conversation.
about homeless people have the
best
best
dogs.
relationships with their dogs. They have the best, like it's.
They're,
never
they're
have a
moving,
leash
They're
on.
migrating with the dog all
Yeah.
the time.
They're the most sound dogs
Yep.
that you ever see out of
Absolutely.
anyone. They're dealing with all the
They're super
exposures
calm.
of traffic, freeways,
Everything.
whatever have you. They're just on the longest walk of their life, and
Yep.
they're so well behaved.
But that's more dog.
Yeah, it's
To be
more-
out there moving all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
To be a
Holy
nomad.
shit.
That's more dog. They're
It's
more
more- yeah,
fulfilled.
it's
They're
way
not,
more
you know,
fulfilled.
I'm sure you've heard of containment phobia, and you can see that in huskies
Yeah.
Oh, man.
and all of that. Those are, you know, I mean, argue with me all you want. Some trainers have tried. But the normal idea is that huskies are the closest to actual wolves, and wolves are migratory. They migrate. And I mean, you can see the paths. They have these really cool, they put collars on them now. And you can see their migration, and it's really cool. But they migrate.
Yeah.
And homeless people migrate constantly.
Man.
So walk your dog.
Or
Yeah.
hire a homeless person to train your dog. Either way.
Yeah, you could pay them.
Yeah.
And they'll get money. They'll be like, look at my poor dog. I was thinking about that on my pack walks. I could just go to a street corner, because I look like a hobo most of the time in the rain. When I'm walking packs of dogs, I look like a straight up hobo. So I can
With
get
like
all,
11 dogs? Like, what?
yeah, and I could just put like a little dirt on them and just sit on the side, and I would probably make
Like a
so much
Old
money.
Starbucks cup and like a
Yeah.
cardboard sign. Like, what do I do next with all
Yeah.
these dogs?
So that's I mean,
We should do that.
it's a direction I may take professionally. I haven't made a decision
Fair.
yet, so.
Fair.
And I'll be getting double paid.
Yeah,
Because those
because
are my
you'll be
client
training the
dogs.
clients' dogs and then getting
They'll
paid
be getting
by random people.
exposure and maybe some free dog food.
Well, you
So.
got to figure it out.
I
You
know.
got to figure it out.
Yeah. So
new
pack
business
walking,
plan.
another reason to pack walk.
We do pack walks, but we don't do them.
No,
like
not
that.
like
We
she
do 'em
does
a little-
pack walks.
Yeah, we do. We really honestly shouldn't even call them pack walks, but
Why not?
because it's not necessary. It's not a pack walk essentially. It's more like
We're really just working on people's handling skills, how in
it's
public
more
or
like
real road.
environmental training and loose leash walking essentially.
I think that's a pack walk.
No, but it's not
Okay,
like
cool.
nobody's walking 12
Yeah, it's not
dogs.
like one person. With, yeah,
That's
it's not that type of
okay.
pack walk.
That's okay, because a lot of trainers that are behavioral relationship-based trainers, they'll do community pack walks where everybody comes out with their dog and the dogs move together. It's still migratory. They're
Yeah.
still moving together, and that's another great way to introduce two dogs that don't know each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, is by walking them. They don't sniff each other, definitely no nose to nose.
Yeah.
And, you know, you could even have a dog that has kind of a, you know, some behavioral stuff, and you can start on two sides of the road and then slowly close in proximity.
Yeah.
The dogs, they can't fixate on each other because they're moving forward, and then they kind of pack up together.
Wouldn't that be a great way to work on reactivity?
Absolutely.
Man, I just got some new ideas. I've learned more from this conversation in the past than being here for 6-7 months.
Don't even.
Not trying to shit on you, Marcus, but there's a lot of new information I'm getting here.
So in case anybody's wondering, today's Jeremy's last day.
I need to, because I'm so new into the like professional, like I'm training my own dog for like, you know, a year or two, and then like professionally I've only been here for like just probably 6 or 7 months or something. I need to start talking to other trainers, get some different ideas on, because there's still things that I struggle with, and I've been able to take a lot away from just this conversation I'm about to apply fucking today. So, yeah, I just need to expose, more exposure.
But there's a lot that there's a lot you do that I want to learn about.
Yeah.
And I think that trainers need to be open-minded.
Which doesn't happen very often for whatever reason, which I don't understand what that is. And I don't know if that's just a Washington thing or that's just across the country.
I think that's an across-the-country
really?
thing.
Like dog trainers are just like, they're so
closed-minded,
not just on methods, philosophies, or whatever have you, but also even just like working with other people. Like it's very like,
well, and it's funny
this is
because
mine over here and I don't want you anywhere near
don't
me.
take my ideas. I mean,
Yeah.
you're reinventing the wheel, buddy.
Not,
Like, there's nothing amazing that you're doing, but you're doing it with your finesse to it, your style, your verbiage. But just because you change the verbiage of something doesn't change the fact that it's been done.
Exactly.
I mean, okay, so I got, this is so controversial. Let's be controversial.
Okay, fair.
So there are some trainers out there that profess, I mean, they're big egos, they profess that they invented pressure release. And I struggle so much because I'm like, horsemen from years, centuries, they have been doing pressure release since before you existed on this planet.
Yeah.
So pressure release was always something that was used. And so pressure release in the industry I come from, or the type of dog behavioral work I come from, is a big deal, okay? And so you can take pressure release and apply different things, like you've got organ tails. You've got the way Sherry does pressure release. You have the way Caesar does pressure release. You have the way some of these other trainers utilize pressure release and different methods of doing it. But the bottom line is you didn't invent it.
Yeah.
And that is a huge thing in the realm that I come
Well, if
from.
you want to get really controversial, who are these dog trainers that said that they made it up?
Listen,
You name dropping or nothing.
there will be a whole war.
Won't be able to stop it. Be the end of the world.
Yeah, but pressure release is when done correctly. And yes, there are some trainers who have perfected it. Like Organ Tails, the way they utilize it is totally their own style, and it's cool. And then you can look at the way they do things and then go to, a different trainer, right? And watch how they use pressure release. There's one trainer in particular, I'm not gonna name drop because I don't even wanna deal with it.
Sure.
But he is amazing at pressure release. Everybody knows he's amazing at pressure release. And he's one of the best of the best. But it doesn't mean you invented it.